And welcome back to part 7 of Final Fantasy 15. Today we're going to start exploring the Deadeye region because there's lots to do, lots to see, and a huge area to explore. Look at this. All the way up to those red dots at the top left is our boundaries. This is by far the biggest area of the map to explore and wander around. So we'll be working our way south down to the Chocobo post first, see what we can find along the way. But the next few parts, just as a fair warning, just in case it's not your tea or you want to see the plot move on, the next few parts are going to be big videos of side questing. I'm not going to be immediately moving over to Lestalem and doing the main plot this part, and probably not the next few parts as well. I'm going to want to be showing off a variety of side quests, a variety of different encounters that are around, and just essentially show the sights of the Deadeye region, because there's a hell of a lot to do now we're here. It really starts to embrace the open world nature of it when you get to this part of the game. But we'll start off by fighting these new enemies, the gorillas. Or gorillas, or how you fucking pronounce it. They're very slow enemies, so don't worry too much about it. They're very predictable, slow enemies that you can parry easy, as you can see there. They do hit a bit hard if you do get hit by them, though, as a fair warning. Because they do have the odd attack like that one that comes out a bit quicker than you might expect.
Hi there, opening.
And in almost every pack there's one big one. Oh, these guys decided to tail along. Hello. I think these are the Vortooths. So keep in mind, because all the recording for Final Fantasy 15 is all post-recording, so I have a much smaller, worse resolution screen that I'm working on for all my commentary, so I don't get to see this stuff as easily. But I have been able to have more spare time recently to keep on top of this. It hasn't been perfect, but when DMC2 was wrapping up, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to crack on and do a few more parts of Final Fantasy 15 if I can, whilst it's literally the only thing on the menu, so to speak, before I crack on with my next project. And to be fair, I have started recording my next project, I just haven't gone in and started any editing or anything like that for the next thing, and I won't spoil what it is until we start. So you have to give it time. But yeah, like, we're in chapter 3, we are making progress in this game. I know it's slow, and I know it's going to get even slower before we reach the end, because it's taken us 7 parts, well, it's the start 7 parts before we actually be able to break into chapter 3, which is the main meat of the game anyway. What we've essentially done is just to prologue these past 6 parts, and even then there was a part where we didn't really advance the plot, I just did side stuff. I just kind of wasted time for most of it. Wait.
Look out.
I guess it's worth pointing out, this game is on PC as well, and at PC you can have it run at a much sturdier frame rate than this. Or if you're playing on PS4 or Xbox One, like the standard one, after many updates it is a hell of a lot more consistent than it was. But when it first launched, it was at the I'll take a shot, Ignis got a new recipe, but when the game first launched, back to what I was saying, the frame rate wasn't perfect. It was a very stuttery game. It'd have a lot of moments, and it still does stutter here and there from time to time, but it's a lot more bearable on PS4 and Xbox. If you're playing on PS4 Pro or Xbox X, it goes at 60 frames per second, and as far as I know, I don't have a PS4 Pro, so don't hold me to it. As far as I know, it's relatively consistent with that 60 frames. Like, it doesn't stutter much at all. And of course, PC version, that depends on the specs of your PC, but if your PC can handle it, this game can probably run like a charm. But that is a fair warning if you haven't played this before and you're getting into it. If your frame rate's a big deal for you, playing it on PS4 and Xbox One might throw you off a bit, because it's 30 frames per second and it stutters from time to time. It struggles to maintain 30 frames every so often. What I'm doing right now is just something I completely forgot to do last part, so I decided to do it this part, which is just go through the Ascension tree and unlock a bunch of skills. Now we've got a bunch of AP to spend. I believe I unlocked the ability to play as Iggy, so I'll be able to show off Ignis's gameplay style. I'm going to leave Gladio's playstyle till last, just because when we get to the episodes, he's the first one, so I kind of wanted to get into Gladio last. So around the time I get into Gladio and start showing off him, is then time for us to jump into the DLC. So I've already had the closest time of warm-up, so to speak. Because for the next while, if I'm not playing as Noct, I'll be playing as Iggy, and less so Prompto, just to show off how Ignis plays. And when I get Gladio, I'll be playing Noctis and Gladio, and less so Ignis and Prompto. And then hopefully come by near the end of the game, I'll just start balancing it out. That's my plan anyway, to start balancing it out a lot more. So you'll have, yeah, Noctis is always going to be played more, since you have to always start an encounter with Noctis and then swap out. But I should hopefully be showing Prompto, Ignis and Gladio around as much, like, for each of them as we go through. Yeah, there are a few moments in the game where you have no choice but to only play as Noctis, but that's just what it is. You can't change that. Alright, this is worth mentioning since it's just been brought up. The cast and crew here will regularly bring up your main objective whilst you're side questing and exploring the open world, which, as much as I don't mind it, at the same time I do mind it. It's a weird hypocrisy of it, like, because there's a part of me that's like, okay, they're helping players out, it's a big open world, they're telling you whereabouts you should really be going. But on the other hand, there's already an objective marker for that, and it's an open world game people are going to want to explore. So having this push of, oh, we should go to the Starlam, we should head towards the Starlam, is just kind of like, let me explore, fuck off. There are enemies over there. And worth mentioning, since it's the Magitech ships over there, starting chapter 3, Magitech ships will start raining down every so often to come get you. So you always have a plethora of encounters if you're standing around or not moving around much. And to my surprise, the reason why I came over to this area is because I thought there'd be loot over here, if I remember rightly. And there ended up just not being loot here at all, so I just was kind of like, oh, okay. Which is probably one way to beat up these guys anyway, the Vortus.
None the worse for wear. Bring on the next one.
Alright, Gladio, your wish is my command. Let's go deal with the Magitech troops. Show off these. When you go to fight a Magitech troops, a different battle theme will play, which is called Veiled in Black, which in the episode The Sky, like, Alpha from like a year and a half ago, it was the nighttime battle theme, but now it's the battle theme that plays every time you mess with the Magitech. And they're also the perfect fodder to experiment with Ignis. Ignis, first of all, has the easiest pick-up counter, or like wake-up counter, I think it's called. When you hit the deck as any character but Noctis, you can unlock it later on with Noctis, but you don't have it at the start. If you hit the square button as you hit the ground, you will recover, like, immediately, and you won't lose your health as a motorbike passes through. Ignis is the easiest to pull off because it outright gives you the prompt for it every time. No one else gets the prompt for it. But anyway, Ignis's gameplay, you have 3 elements to choose from. If you go with the fire element, all his weapons will be focused on one enemy and you will rip through their health bars stupendously quick. But it's only singular, it's to focus on one. If you go to ice, you'll be doing far less damage, but it's a group wide. It will be hitting around him, so it's good for hitting many enemies, things like that. The electric one, I'm not entirely sure how much damage it does. I think it does somewhere in the middle. But it's all about speed, because it's about making distance the enemies. So in theory, what you should be doing is using the lightning to make the distance, to get up and close and personal with them, stopping the fire if it's one of them, stopping to ice if there's many, and wrapping through them as quickly as possible. As you go through, you'll build up his thing called Total Clarity. As my throat goes again, it keeps going, it's terrible. But with Total Clarity, you can do a special move when it's filled up, where in what it does is depending on what element you're on as well. If it's fire, it will be immense damage to a singular enemy. Electric, it will set up vantage points for them to help travel the distance, and ice, it will be a group-wide damaging thing. But all in all, Ignis is worth experimenting with, because in the right hands, Ignis is the most powerful character of the bunch. He's the most powerful bro. The only other thing worth mentioning is that Ignis has 3 techniques to his disposal. He has a high jump, which is essentially the Dragoon jump from any older Final Fantasy game. So if you've played any older Final Fantasy, you already know what I'm talking about. You launch very high into the air and are completely invulnerable to attacks, but then a set period of time later, you'll come back and slam down with a hit that's supposed to do around double the damage of a normal hit, to make up for the fact you spent a lot of time in the air. So you have a turn of freedom to then come back for the next one. Additionally, I forget the name of the move, but he has the ability to essentially imbue the element onto his weapon, so you can mix up elements. Like, you can imbue fire and then swap to electric to get the fire damage but the electric speed, etc, etc. Making it very powerful in the right hands, but that costs 2 meter. But it's 3 meter. It's something that's available in the open world, but it's not available in his personal episode when we get to it much later on. It's called Quick Recipe. And quick recipe is just a move they made purely because of the meme of Ignis making a new recipe every so often. Ignis will throw together ingredients on the spot and will make something. It takes about 3 to 5 seconds to make it, and it has a big variety of results it can be. On one hand, it could be very good, it could buff you in lots of very ways, making you extremely powerful for quite a long while, or make you extremely defensive, or make you so you're immune to fire, things like that. It could be really beneficial in the right hands. However, he can't, if at any point he uses the same ingredient twice, it will end up in a disaster, and a disaster stops you from healing and nerfs you every single way possible. So it's very much a roll of the dice move. You could get something really badass, or you could get something that will spell and certify your doom. But Ignis, in my opinion, is probably the most fun to play as of all the bros. Like, next to Noct. Because Noct I enjoy because I've grown to enjoy it because he's just a hack and slash player. But Iggy's got a lot of diversity about him that makes him very fun. Prompto's alright. I've grown to like Prompto. I felt he was kind of weak when I first played him in the DLC, but in the open world, the way they've made alterations to how he played compared to the episode just make him so fun. And Gladio, we'll get to Gladio later. Gladio's the most entertaining if you know how to play as him, but he's one of the harder ones to get into because you have to know how to parry, you have to know how to time yourself and pace things out. It's the closest thing to the technical fighter that we have in this, and it's through Gladio. And before Ignis, Gladio was my favourite, and I think Gladio is quite a few people's favourite, even if his DLC itself wasn't the best. Which I felt, because I felt Gladio kind of got the short end of the stick, because yeah, all the episodes are relevant to the plot, but Gladio's is just sort of like a small collection of little levels almost. I won't spoil too much, but it's just sort of like a small thing, whilst Prompto's and Ignis's are much bigger deals. It just feels like Gladio got the short end of the stick with them, and I know that's just because his DLC was first, so they were probably still experimenting to see what people want. And what we've got post it makes up for it, I feel. I think the only DLC I'm a little bitter about how it was handled is the Royal Edition itself, because the Royal Edition makes the main game feel more complete, and it's not, you can't just pick up the game and play it and get it. You have to buy it. It's the 20 quid extra expansion, assuming you don't buy the Royal Edition like box, like the new box that was released at the same time. It just feels like a bit of a, alright. It feels like it should have been almost been in a free update because it's adding more to the main game. It makes it feel more finished, because I'm being as wary as I can around spoilers, but just to get around it, the final main chapter of the game, although it was good, felt quite rushed and incomplete at launch. It was still enjoyable, but there were elements about it that didn't feel quite as fleshed out as they could have been. The Royal Edition fleshes that out. It fixes that problem and makes it feel more complete and wrapped up. Which is why I felt it really should have been something that was just added, not something that was here's an extra expansion, pay us for it. It felt a bit off, personally. And I know we're getting 4 more expansions at the end of the year in early 2019, which I'm thinking like, oh my god, really? But I know that only one of them is supposed to be canon, and the other 3 is supposed to be a what-if, like, alternate story sort of thing. Which I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Like, I'm sure I'll have my actual opinions once it eventually comes out, because I will experiment and show it off, and it'll be a part of the Let's Play, just it'll be afterwards. Like, even as I've said it many times before, but if the episodes come out before I finish the Let's Play, I won't try and slot them in. I'm still going to wait until I've finished everything that I've got on the plan, and once I've done all that, then I'll do bonus parts that will cover those extra DLCs. But I've got a bit more time to mess around with Final Fantasy 15, so hopefully we'll make enough progress that they won't all come out before I'm done with this game. And I've said before that I still want to bring guests over, because episode Gladio, I know that's still quite a while off yet, but when we get to it, if Reese is up for it, I want him to tag along, because firstly he's a better Gladio player than me, so the offer's there, dude. If you're watching this, the offer's there. If you want to come sort something out and you play as Gladio and we'll talk over it, you're welcome to. It's an open invite. Join us. It'll be fun. It'll be a nice one-off. As for episode Iggy and episode Prompto, I have another friend that I don't mention because I don't know if she'd want me to just name drop her because she kind of keeps to herself. But I know she's a huge Prompto fan, so I might get her to be able to convince her to tag along. I'll have to ask and see if I can sort something out. And as for episode Iggy, I have no idea. Iggy's my favourite of the bros personally, so I don't mind just tackling it on my own because I'll just be gushing about Iggy for most of it. But I don't know, I might be able to see if I can get someone to tag along. It just depends on who I bump into and who I can get a hold of. And who I can convince to come round mine to record it. And Comrades, I've already said before, I don't mind having Reese along if he wants to do it, just because we both quite enjoyed Comrades. I know he got into it a lot more than me because he started making sure he could get really high numbers and really good stats, but I'm sure he'll be happy to tag along, get him to play as Gladio and show off his parrying abilities again. But anyway, back to the game at hand. When we got to the Wiz Chocobo post, we were told that we're not allowed any Chocobos because there's a very frightful monster scaring them all off and making it very dangerous when they come. The monster in question is a behemoth called Deadeye. If you've ever played an older Final Fantasy game, you already know how much of a big deal that is. Behemoths are usually the end-all gods of them that you fight in the final dungeons or late game areas that are extremely powerful monsters that eventually start to become commonplace as you progress through the game. But behemoths should never be taken for granted. They are very powerful and can fuck you up very quickly. And that's our side quest. If you want Chocobos, you gotta take down Deadeye. What makes Deadeye easier than the other ones is that he is blind in one eye, and you can actually use that to advantage. The AI will not notice you if you're on his blind side. And it's easy to work out the blind side because the side that he's blind on is also the same side that his horn is damaged. So you just look at the damaged horn and you find him. This side quest was the entire main quest of the Episode to Sky early alpha. Yeah, things were changed around because in the alpha, you wasn't doing it to get access to Chocobos. You were doing it because the car broke down and you were raising money to get it repaired, and the cost was 20,000, and beating the side quest would get you 20,000. So that was how that was the whole premise. It was you getting the guild to repair your car. And they give you this very small chunk of the Sky area. They gave you this swampish area, like the inner circle. They didn't give you the outer edge. They didn't give you the bottom half. They didn't give you the left half. They just gave you a chunk of it. And it was your play area for the Episode to Sky Alpha, and like I said, the entire premise was to just do the Deadeye quest and then get out. But even then, the Deadeye quest in the Alpha is bigger than the Deadeye quest in this, because in that, firstly you had to find footprints, and the footprints would lure you to the foresty area that we're just gonna head to because the game says, alright, go to it. Secondly, you had to retreat and leave, because your first visit was the Deadeye was too powerful, and you had to retreat. And then it was later on you would come back with a summon that I won't spoil which one. You'd come back with a summon and you had to use the summon to kill it. But that was back when the way they handled summons was ridiculously overpowered. And alright, hey, that's like the third recipe today. Can we check that? Alright.
What do you say, Prompto?
My hair does not look like a chocobo bud.
Okay. I am still looking around for these little book things here and there because I'm trying to get the trophy as I go along. And I can't be bothered to do it on my main file, so I'd rather just do it on this Let's Play and just see if I hopefully get them all as I go along. As long as I get the ones that are missable in the later chapters, because there are some chapters that are short and linear and you can't go back to them afterwards. And I know that there's a couple book files in those chapters, so as long as I get those ones, the rest are fine. The rest I can get in like a bonus part, like a montage scavenging hunt. What's this over here? Right, before we head out, because it is evening, what I think we might do, if I can find it, oh there it is, I'm going to camp out for the evening and then tackle Behemoth in the next day. But this does not mean the end of the part, because I want to take down Deadeye this part, which is why this part's probably going to... Well, as I can look at it, the part's got another 20 minutes yet. But we will camp here, because the caravan's got the little extra experience boost while we're at it.
Oh yeah, I'm game.
King's Knight was actually a mobile game that you could play for a while, and there was an event when Noctis, Ignis, Prompto and Gladio were actually on the game, and they'd have little message conversations with you and things like that. But anyway, let's go here, rack up our experience, see what photos Prompto's taken. I hope he's taken a few good ones today. I'm going to say only one level. I don't think we'll make it to 16. Yeah, no. Ah, oh, Gladio nearly got to level 3 of that. Alright, that's... apparently I saved that one. In hindsight, I shouldn't have. That one's kind of cool. Yeah, I can see why I saved that one. That one's a good combat one, so I want to keep a mix and match. But the good thing is that the way I'm looking at it, this part should definitely be out before the pre-E3 shenanigans. Because I am being very aware of E3 and everything going on there. And quite a number of companies like to do their E3 stuff before E3 nowadays. And it's like, I know first on the line is EA, which you know they're either going to do damage control or just continue lying to our faces. Because they can't pull the we'll do better next time card with Star Wars, because they did that last time and look what they did afterwards, and an entire controversy kicked off. So they can't do that again because people will go whatever. But we know that they're going to do something along the lines of we're here for you, we're here for the players, all that crap, because that's just EA. They'd rather do damage control or lie to our face than actually deliver on a promise and make something good. The only good thing we got out of them this past few months was a one-off indie game that had no right being as good as it was, called A Way Out.
Gladio, come on. Gotcha.
Hey, what's this over here? Ooh, I'm Bangle, neat. Oh, there's a side quest you activate there. What's that about? I don't recognise you. Unless you're just a photo opportunity. Like, you talk to them, they say, go check this out.
The disc really is on fire.
Yeah, the disc in the centre of the map is always burning. Thanks for that, Ignis.
Seeing as we're near, why don't we make a stop at the Disc of Corthus?
Yes, let's add that to the side quest book.
Yeah, that sounds good.
When it comes to like being when a teammate stops you to ask for a side quest, it doesn't matter if you say yes or no, it will be added to the log anyway, so you might as well just be nice and say yeah, and then just do it later. But the Nebula Wood above us is where the majority of the Sky took place back when, like 18 months before the game came out. Actually, what side quest do we have? We have Behemoth Undertaking, we have Professor Protege, we have Friends of the Feather, Pilgrimage. Yeah, I know I was just keeping track because I am still trying to work out how I'm going to handle the side quest. I just knew I wanted to do this one first. I wanted to show this one off first, is the thing. I want to show off, because there are royal tombs in the area, I want to show off some of them, but I'm not going to go for all of them, because one of them's a bastard. One of them is an area known as Coastal Mark Tower, and that area can rot in hell. I'm not even sure I'm going to do it in the main game, because I've mentioned before that I don't want to be over leveled, but Coastal Mark Tower kinda makes you over leveled, because it says recommended level 55, which is higher than the level for the final boss. So yeah. But then saying that, I'd have to go and mess on my main account a bit more, but I might not mind going a little bit higher than I originally said, because my original level limit for myself would be 45, was what I was going to limit myself to. But with the Royal Edition's extra events and bosses, I might let myself go a little bit higher, just because some of them are a bit challenging, and I think being a slightly higher level would still keep it balanced, but we'll see. It entirely depends on how much experimentation I do before we get there, and how I feel when we get there. Because keep in mind, there's a good chance I might even be rusty by the time I get there, just because there's been a number of times where I haven't been able to play this game for a little while, and I've had to quickly try and get back in the groove before recording a part. The last couple parts have been a good example of that. I recorded them all in a sequence, but before that, when I had that month and a half gap, that was a month and a half of just me not playing it, so I had to get back in the groove quickly of it. But so that, just showing it off there, you saw it there, that's Ignis's ultra quick recovery. Where it will just come up, if you just wait when you're hit and then press square when it says, you can get a free parry whenever. But I didn't press it then for some reason, but it's a very forgiving parry and you can really abuse it if you learn it. But as you're seeing here, the lightning is very quick and zippy and allows you to get around quick. Every attack does have a final attack of it, which is essentially just there to stop you spamming it infinitely. It's something that will make you stand still to do a final hit, so you have to be careful not to get caught up in it. You have to know when to time yourself, essentially. But this area does have a lot of loot, and is extremely foggy, so keep an eye out for alternate paths on the minimap. Because they're always worth going down, because some of them have loot, but some of them, after the Royal Edition, have added journal logs. Like, I think there's one down here that you can find as well. So there is a journal log that you can completely go past and not realise is there if you're not looking. I think it's if you go right down this end, there's a book log. Yeah, like one of the data log things here. And that gets added to your log. And keep in mind, there is a trophy for it. And the trophy is a pretty high percentage. I think it's either 80 or 90%, but it's very high. And it's like the only one of 2 trophies I'm missing in the game still. The other one is beating the true final boss of Comrades, the old multiplayer expansion. When they added the second half of Comrades to Comrades, when the Royal Edition came out. That bit was actually free, to be fair. The Comrades stuff was added for free. It was just the actual main chunk of the Royal Edition, the main game wasn't. And we get a little cutscene here because Deadeye's close. So we're going to have to follow Gladio carefully and slowly here, but we are approaching Deadeye. Because I've got fond memories of this chunk from Episode to Sky, because this part wasn't voice acted in English, so you just hear a little like birding, and it was blue text on the bottom screen, and there's a lot of people who theorised that they either had some kind of spiritual linking chat, something like that, or there was some kind of secret thing that they just hadn't mentioned yet. No, it was just because they wasn't voiced, and so they put like a little sound chip and just made the subtitles blue to highlight you should be reading it. Anyway, that's Deadeye, and you can see the blind spot. That exact line was not voiced in the alpha, and that was one of the things. But it came with the blue text, and Gladio didn't even move his lips. He just went ding, and you just saw it. So people thought it was like some kind of spiritual chat, either that or sign language, and it was quite funny to see when Square Enix eventually just turned around and went, no, we just didn't get them voiced. Stop. But goddamn, like when I first saw the Behemoth, I wasn't that impressed, but it's when the actual main 15 came around and I got to see it again, just to see how much of a technical and graphical improvement they've made to these guys from 13. Because 13, the Behemoths already look pretty nice, but this, they just have so many more attention to details and it's so much more cleaned up. They look threatening, and they look really cool. Because I always felt they were too clean in 13. I know it's because 13 was the first HD game, so they wanted to make them look clean and nice and shiny, but I like the more rugged, aggressive style that they've got for them in this game. It just looks more fitting for a Behemoth. Especially because this game actually acknowledges the main Final Fantasy continuity, in the sense that there's not just one type of Behemoth. There are other versions of Behemoths later on, including the King Behemoth that has goddamn wings, which were absolute nightmare fuel for me as a kid. But those things genuinely scared me when I was a kid going through Final Fantasy VI. And keep in mind, Final Fantasy VI is like the easiest Final Fantasy, but seeing a winged Behemoth when those guys are like the most daunting enemies in the series anyway, that was a big oh god moment when you saw them. But they are back in this game. There's only one I know of in the main game. There's one you can do for a hunt, and there's one actually on the main journey you can encounter.
It's weak on the right. No eye, no horn. We'll stay in range until we can exploit its blind spot.
In the original, the way you had to do your first assault on Deadeye that ultimately was scripted for you to fail, was that you had to piss off and lure Deadeye around to a giant drum that I'll point out when we get there. And then when you lure it there, it would come up with a prompt to signal Prompto to shoot the drum and make it detonate. And then they do the fake out of making you think you'd killed it when in reality you hadn't. And then it'd get back up and you'd have to retreat. And then you have to do a dungeon that we won't actually get to do for a little later on, which I found was kind of weird. But then the dungeon itself, they've expanded a hell of a lot compared to the original, which I noticed quite quickly. Because it's quite a small dungeon that took about 10 minutes in Episode to Sky, and in this it's not a 10 minute small thing. They've added quite a bit to it. But as we enter this section, this is taken from the original as well, and it's the exact same pathing for it as well. So if you've done it from Episode to Sky, you already know what we're talking about.
Yeah, as long as we stay on guard ourselves.
We have to tail Deadeye to his home. If you get too close, he will spot you and it will fail you. If you get too far away, it will become impossible to see through the fog. The game will warn you though if you get slightly too far away or if you're taking too many risks. But at any point, you can actually get pretty close to him if you're behind something. So you exploit it to your best of ability. As you see there, because I'm close, I became in his sensory range. Because if you're at a distance but on his right side, you'll be fine because he won't see you. But if you're close to an enemy, it doesn't matter if you're not in their line of sight. They will almost, I don't know how to put it other than they'll kind of sense that you're very close to them. They'll get that sixth sense feeling that you're really close and might turn around and spot you, which is why the red meter keeps on appearing at the top of the screen even though we weren't in his sight, because we were too close and he was starting to sense that that we were around, that our presence was near. But if you're on his left side, he can spot you from quite a distance, so be wary of that. That, as you saw there, he saw us from around that rock from quite a healthy distance. So if you're on his left side, be very careful. If you can get to his right side, you do have a lot more leeway because of him, because of his blind spot. And I think that's what we'll try and do here. I'll try and move around to his right side, yeah. Just, yeah, so now I'm on his right side, so now he can't see me as easily. He has to actually turn his head to see me. Either that or he'll sense me if I get too close. I don't know how this will come up when it's on YouTube, but on the rendering that I've got for the editing and whatnot, it's making the fog seem a bit thicker than it actually is. Like, it's some Silent Hill level of fog here. Certainly, I don't know if you can actually see Deadeye, but hopefully you can. There is an outline of him. But the thing is, usually I never like fog in video games, but Silent Hill was the only exception because they used it as a part of the game. It wasn't just an excuse to reduce the render distance. They used it in the story they were telling and how they were handling it, and it made it more interesting because of it. Oh, I miss Silent Hill. If Konami didn't just, you know, fuck everyone, we might have actually had Silent Hills, and it might have been pretty good. Might have been good. I don't know, I'm still not sure how I feel about how having an actor's face put onto a game, because that was like the one thing video games never had to worry about, which was the uncanny valley. Uncanny valley even. But it's like you could make a character, like, can you think of all your classic characters from your childhood? Do they look like actors you knew? Probably not. That Solid Snake did not look like Kiefer Sutherland, he looked like Solid Snake. And now we've got like, it was, I think the only exception where I thought it was kind of okay was someone who's been in a lot of Yakuza stuff, like movies and television, then having his face modelled over into a Yakuza game. It kind of made sense because you only see him as someone as a Yakuza lifestyle person. So him being in a new Yakuza game made sense. It was like, oh, okay, cool. But everything else, like having Norman Reedus, Mads, and Del Toro, no, not Del Toro, Guillermo del Toro, I always forget how to pronounce what his name is, having their face pretty much implanted onto it just seems a bit like, alright, sure. It just seems like an unnecessary thing. It's like it's an extra obstacle you're putting in front of yourself trying to get around Uncanny Valley.
All in a day's work.
How did these guys get here? They just teleported in front of me. How did they get here before me? But there is elemency here you can absorb, which is your hint, by the way. They give you fire energy. It's your hint you're gonna need fire. As you see, I go into my elemency now. I've already got a fire spell, but I make a proper one now. We've actually got the resources to mess with it a bit more. Because if you go to your ingredients or treasures, you can attach more to it. I know I've been selling some of my treasures, but I've only been selling the treasures that really don't matter too much. But it's experience cast, which will give you an extreme experience boost if it's used. Fail cast is a weird one. It does a lot more damage, but it's a 50-50 chance of failing on you. Dual cast, tri cast, quad cast, and sync cast all speak for themselves. It does it multiple times. Stop cast has the ability to freeze them in their place, which is what I think I go with. Yeah. There's a few other like curse casts. There's chance to cause cursed. There's one that can harm you. And then much later on, there's very exact treasures that if you find it will upgrade the spell to the ultimate variant of their spell, which will be Flare, Electron, and I want to say Freeze, but I can't remember off the top of my head. That giant old drum there, that giant one, the one I'm running up to, this is what you had to lure Deadeye to on the Sky demo. So if you haven't played episode to Sky and are wondering why that's there and you never get to do anything with it, that's why. It had a purpose in the episode to Sky, but just not now. But as you approach over here, Deadeye will spot you, and you get given this. This is your hint on how to beat him. There's oil drums around that will do insane damage to him if you can get to explode on him. I know they have lowered Deadeye's resistances and whatnot as well, so there is that if you have your ability. But we have now got Deadeye. At level 15, he has 48,200 HP, has a strength stat of 2,200, so he hits like a truck, but a defense / vitality stat of 157, and spirit / magic of 136, meaning magic will do more damage to him, is more effective than him, and his physical capabilities are worth avoiding, because if he hits you, he might take you down in one hit. He has a 20% additional weakness to great swords and shields, but that's not what you should be using against him. He has a 300% weakness to fire. If you do fire on him, he will take triple damage from it, which is why the fire elemency and the oil drums are your best friend, because they will rip through his health bar like nobody's business, as you can already see. Additionally, he is a 50% resistant to ice and lightning and light instant kills. He is it's worth mentioning, he is not immune to instant kills, he is just resistant, so you can still use them, they're just less likely to connect. The strategy for this fight is entirely fire elemency. If you have fire on you, this fight will drop very quickly, then Deadeye will not be able to do too much to you to keep the pressure up. But it is worth mentioning, if he hits you, you're probably going to go down in 1 or 2 hits. The giant oil drums here, I don't know exactly how much damage they do for exploding, but I compare it to around the damage of a flare, which is why if an oil drum explodes next to him, it does so much of his health, because he is on the last 5 or so thousand of his HP already. Ow. I'm just gonna eat a potion. Not eat, drink a potion. And then immediately throw the stop cast. Things like stop he is resistant to. He can be affected by it, but you're probably not going to see it because he will die from the fire before you get the chance to. But that's it. That's Deadeye. He's not a hard fight. He can be quite intimidating because he's a behemoth, and so of course he's intimidating. But if you understand his triple weakness to fire, he will drop very quickly. And that's it. All we got to do now is return to the Chocobo post. And from there, we will be able to ride Chocobos. We'll be able to start renting them. The Chocobos, how they work, just because we've got a few minutes left of me fiddling with stuff. When you use them, they will naturally gain experience as you travel, and will eventually level up, capping at level 9. Each level will either boost how fast they can go, or how much stamina they've got, or how much strength they've got. And strength can just be like charging in on an attack sort of thing, that stuff. So it's worth messing around with and getting a feel for, and using them a bunch to get their levels up. Because additionally, there are Chocobo races, and you need your Chocobo to level up a bit to win some of those races, because it gets kind of tough. And you do get to ride your Chocobo in the races, unlike some of the other Final Fantasy games where you just bet on one and watch it try. Worth mentioning, when you hop through here, you kick this open as you go through, so now it's permanently available for you to go back through it as convenience. I don't know off the top of my head if any other hunt or side quest takes place in that area, but if it does, you do have a quick access back to there now. So don't worry about it so much. But yeah, that's Chocobos in a nutshell. You can change the name of them. I will be changing it to Chocobro, because I always do that. If anyone comes up with a better name that's funnier or wittier or things like that, let me know and I'll happily change it. I will be changing the colour of Noctis's one, but I think only white is available right now, so I'll be changing Noctis's and only Noctis's to show that it's different, because I always thought the protagonist should have a different coloured bird than the rest of them. Sorry, just my thing. And you do start with only one medal, the replica medal, which is kind of just like the whoop-de-doo medal, not an actually important one. But coming over here, Wiz will congratulate us for taking down Deadeye and let us rent. You can rent the Chocobos for up to 7 days at a time, and it's 7 in-game days, so I don't have to worry about my recording schedule ruining using Chocobos. Additionally, when you go camping, the Chocobos will be with you at camp, and you can feed them Geshal greens. And yes, that is how they are pronounced. It took me a long time to learn that. I called them Geshal greens for a long time, but no, they're Geshal greens. Made from the village of Geshal that was found in Final Fantasy III. And feeding them different variants of Geshal greens will give them different benefits for the next day. So it's worth messing with and buying for them, because you might be able to make them so they can glide, because they can't actually fly, but they can kind of float as they jump. And things like that. Gladio, I wanted to hug the Chocobo, you're getting in the way. But either way, I've rambled on enough for one part. The system's there. I'll show changing everything, because this is the lady you talk to either buy different versions of Geshal greens. You have an unlimited supply of basic Geshal greens, but any advanced green you have to buy. You can also find very rare ones if you linger around.
The birds have been waiting for y'all.
And so you can change the name. I'll be changing it to Chocobro. But whilst we're here, next time on Final Fantasy 15, we'll continue exploring the land of Sky, tackling any side quests we come across, because yeah, we're not advancing the plot for another few parts, as I said at the start. Sorry if you want us to go to Lestalem, you're going to have to wait a few parts. But until then, you guys take care now. I'm going to let the rest of this just play out at the end of the footage, but take care now.
Pleasure doing business with you.
Huh?